The sand was wrong. That was the first thing Logan noticed, when consciousness clawed its way back into his body. Not the pain. Pain was familiar, a constant companion etched into his bones, but the texture beneath his palms. Too fine. Too dry. It slid between his fingers like powdered glass, whispering as the wind dragged it across his skin. He coughed and tasted blood and dust. Logan rolled onto his side, muscles screaming in protest, and forced his eyes open. Twin suns burned overhead, bleaching the sky a harsh, merciless blue. Heat pressed down on him from every direction, baking the ground, cooking the air in his lungs. He lay half buried in a shallow crater, blackened stone and fused sand radiating outward like the scar of an impact. He had fallen from the sky. Memory came in jagged fragments. A tearing sensation, like being pulled through a meat grinder made of lightning. Pressure. Weightlessness. Then fire. No jet engines. No sentinel. No familiar battlefield. Just the void. And then this. Great, Logan muttered, his voice raw. Another desert. He pushed himself to his knees. His body responded slowly, sluggish in a way that set every instinct on edge. He cataloged the damage without thinking. Third-degree burns along his back and shoulders, deep lacerations across his ribs, at least 2 broken fingers, and something wrong with his left leg, fractured femur, maybe. It hurt like hell. More than it should have. That bothered him. Logan waited for the usual rush, the warm, furious knitting of flesh, the bones snapping back into place like offended animals. It came, but slower. The burns smoked as new skin crawled over them. His ribs shifted with a wet crunch. The pain didn't fade so much as linger, dragging its claws through every nerve. "Since when do you take your sweet time?" he growled at his own body. The answer, of course, was that his body didn't owe him explanations. He staggered to his feet, favoring the leg until it grudgingly straightened under his weight. The crater lay at the edge of a rocky escarpment, overlooking a vast sprawl of junk and rusted metal. Towers of scrap climbed toward the suns, stitched together from starship hulls, engine parts, and things Logan couldn't name. Smoke coiled lazily upward from industrial fires. He could hear distant engines, shouting voices, the crackle of energy discharges. A settlement. Not a friendly one. The smells hit him next: oil, ozone, burning fuel, unwashed bodies, fear. Lots of fear. It clung to the place, like rot. Logan bared his teeth in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Yeah," he said softly. "I know this kind of place." He didn't make it 10 steps down the slope before the first shot came. A bolt of red energy screamed past his head and exploded against the rock behind him, showering sparks. Logan dropped into a crouch on instinct, senses flaring. His ears caught the whine of cheap power cells, the scrape of boots on metal, the elevated heart rates of at least 4, no 5, beings closing in from his right. "Hey," a voice shouted in a language Logan didn't know, but somehow understood. Harsh, guttural, layered with threat. "You. Offworlder. Hands where we can see 'em." Logan slowly raised his hands, turning toward the sound. 5 figures emerged from behind a ridge of scrap. Humanoid, all of them. Patchwork armor. Helmets with narrow visors. Blaster rifles leveled at his chest. Slavers, his instinct supplied instantly. One of them laughed. "Look at this one. Dropped right out of the sky." "Probably dead already," another said. "Or close enough." Logan tilted his head, sniffed the air. Fear spiked as they got a good look at his face. Burns healing before their eyes, wounds closing with wet finality. "Huh," Logan said. "That usually scares people faster." The leader stepped forward, taller than the rest, confidence bolstered by numbers and firepower. "Doesn't matter what you are. Your property now. Emperor's space. Drop to your knees." The word property did it. Logan's hands clenched into fists. Metal whispered against bone as his claws slid free with a sound like knives kissing steel. The slavers froze. "What?" Logan moved. He crossed the distance faster than their fear could turn to action. The first slaver lost his rifle and 2 fingers in the same motion. Logan pivoted, drove his shoulder into the second, felt ribs collapse. A blaster bolt caught him in the side, white-hot agony. but he barely noticed as he tore the weapon from the shooter's hands and crushed his throat with a single squeeze. The remaining two opened fire wildly. Bolts burned furrows across Logan's chest and arms, blasting chunks of flesh away. Pain roared. His healing struggled to keep up, muscles knitting as fast as they were torn apart. Logan laughed, a harsh, feral sound, and charged through it. Claws met armor. Armor met adamantium. There was screaming, blood, the wet thud of bodies hitting sand. It was over in seconds. Logan stood alone amid the carnage, chest heaving, skin smoking where blaster fire had struck. He looked down at himself, watching muscle and skin crawl back into place. Still slower than normal, but it worked. He wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand and looked toward the settlement. Guest introductions are over. Word spread fast in places like this. By the time Logan reached the edge of the scrapyard city, its name, he would later learn, was Croghan's Reach. People were already whispering. He could hear it in the quickened heartbeats, smell it in the sharp tang of panic sweat. The unkillable one, the metal skeleton, the off-world demon. He kept his head down, moving through narrow alleys strung with cables and flickering hololights. Droids rolled past him, some humanoid, some barely recognizable, chirping and whirring. No one paid them much attention. Living beings did, though. Eyes followed Logan wherever he went. He didn't like that. A cantina squatted at the center of the settlement, all durasteel plates and neon signs buzzing with dying light. Music thumped inside, distorted and aggressive. Logan paused at the entrance, listening. He could hear arguments, deals being made, the clink of credits. Information lived in places like this. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and spilled alcohol. Species Logan had never seen crowded together. Horns, scales, fur, tentacles. The galaxy, apparently, had gotten a lot bigger. Logan slid onto a stool at the bar. The bartender, a four-armed alien with tired eyes, hesitated before approaching. "You're not for around here," the bartender said carefully. Logan snorted. "That obvious?" "You fell out of the sky," someone muttered nearby. Logan glanced sideways. A bounty hunter sat 2 stools down, armor cleaner than most, helmet resting on the bar. The man's posture was relaxed, but his pulse was steady, controlled. "Professional. Empire's gonna hear about you," the bounty hunter continued. "They hear about everything." Logan took the offered drink when the bartender slid it over. He sniffed it, grimaced, then downed it anyway. Burned like fuel. "Empire," Logan repeated. "Yeah, heard that one before." The bounty hunter chuckled. "Trust me, you don't want their attention." Logan met his gaze. "Funny thing is, pal, I don't want anyone's." The cantina door hissed open. Silence rippled outward as black-armored stormtroopers filed in, blasters raised. White helmets. Imperial insignia. Logan's senses flared to life. He counted them automatically. 8 troopers. 2 officers. One presence that made the air feel heavier, colder. Not here yet, but close. The bounty hunter swore under his breath. Too late. The lead officer pointed directly at Logan. "You. Stand up." Slowly. Logan sighed, claws twitching beneath his skin. "Figures," he muttered. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, far beyond Croghan's Reach, a red lens focused its gaze on a report marked anomalous biological entity. Darth Vader turned toward the stars. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. The first blaster bolt took Logan in the chest. It didn't knock him back. He was too heavy, too grounded for that. But it burned a smoking crater straight through his shirt and into muscle. Pain flared white-hot, sharper than the weapons he'd faced before, and Logan felt something unfamiliar ripple through his body. Not just damage, disruption. Like his cells hesitated, unsure how to respond. He growled and moved anyway. The cantina erupted into chaos. Patrons dove for cover, tables overturned, glasses shattered against the durasteel floor. Logan lunged forward as the stormtroopers fired in tight, disciplined bursts. Red energy filled the air, scorching walls, punching holes through furniture. Logan weaved through it on instinct alone. A trooper swung his rifle to track him. Too slow. Logan's claws punched through plastoid armor and flesh, lifting the man off his feet before tearing free in a spray of blood. Another trooper slammed the butt of his blaster into Logan's skull. The impact rang like a hammer on an anvil. Logan barely felt it. He headbutted back, feeling cartilage give, then spun and hurled the trooper across the room. The man crashed into the bar, hard enough to cave in Durasteel supports. The remaining troopers backed up, firing as they went. One bolt caught Logan in the shoulder, another in the thigh. He staggered, not from weakness, but surprise. His leg screamed as muscle burned away faster than it could heal. "Since when do you guys pack this kind of punch?" he snarled. An officer barked orders. "Stun settings. We need him alive." Stun. Logan didn't like the sound of that. Blue rings of energy snapped into him from 3 directions at once. They wrapped around his torso, his arms, his neck. Every nerve in his body lit up. His muscles seized, locking him in place as if invisible chains had sunk hooks into his spine. He dropped to one knee, teeth clenched, a roar tearing out of his throat. This wasn't pain. This was paralysis. The troopers advanced cautiously, rifles trained on his head. Logan's healing factor fought back, burning through the stun energy cell by cell. But whatever powered these weapons wasn't just electricity. It felt wrong, like his nervous system was being overwritten. He forced himself upright anyway. The troopers froze. Logan straightened inch by inch, shaking, smoke rolling off his skin as his body adapted. The stun field flickered, then collapsed. Silence. One trooper whispered, "That's not possible." Logan lunged. By the time it was over, the cantina was a ruin of scorched metal and broken bodies. Stormtroopers lay scattered like discarded armor. The officers were gone, fled in the confusion. Logan stood alone again, chest rising and falling heavily. His wounds closed slowly, stubbornly, leaving behind faint scars that faded only after several long seconds. That bothered him more than he wanted to admit. He didn't stay to enjoy the aftermath. Logan burst out the back of the cantina and into the labyrinthine scrapyards beyond, sprinting across catwalks and heaps of rusted hull plating. Alarms wailed across Kroghan's reach now, harsh and shrill. Searchlights cut through the smoke-choked sky. He moved low, fast, following instinct and scent rather than logic. His enhanced senses painted a map of the city in his mind. Heat signatures, fear trails, ozone from discharged blasters. They were hunting him. He dropped into a drainage tunnel and followed it for nearly a kilometer before climbing out into the shadow of a derelict starship half buried in sand. Logan crouched there, catching his breath, listening. Imperial boots echoed overhead. Droids scanned the area, their optics sweeping back and forth. Logan flexed his hands. His claws slid out and back in again, slower than usual. He frowned. "Okay," he muttered. "Something's definitely off." It wasn't just the weapons. Ever since he'd arrived, there was a pressure in the air, a low, constant hum beneath everything. Not sound. Something deeper. It tugged at him in a way he didn't like, brushing against his instincts, his anger, his memories. Like the world itself was watching. A sudden shout broke his focus. "There!" Tracks. Logan cursed silently and bolted. He tore through the scrapyard, leaping gaps that would have killed a normal man, landing hard and rolling to absorb the impact. Blaster fire chased him, sizzling past his ears, blowing chunks out of metal walls. He reached the edge of the settlement and didn't slow down. The desert swallowed him whole. Night fell fast under twin suns. Logan ran until the sounds of pursuit faded, and the only thing left was the wind howling across the dunes. He collapsed behind a rock formation, back against cold stone, and let his head fall forward. His body finally caught up with itself. Exhaustion hit him like a freight train. His healing factor worked tirelessly, sealing burns, regrowing muscle. But each repair felt heavier, slower, as if it were dragging against resistance. He stared at his hands in the dim light, watching skin knit over scorched adamantium. "You're not home," he said quietly. The desert answered with silence. Hours later, He sensed them before he saw them. 3 heartbeats. Slow. Calm. Predatory. Logan rose silently, claws whispering free. Figures crested the dune ahead, armored, cloaked, moving with unnatural grace. Not stormtroopers. Not slavers. Something else. One of them spoke, voice distorted by a helmet. Target acquired. Biological readings confirmed. Another tilted his head, as if listening to something Logan couldn't hear. He's angry, the figure said. Always angry. That sent a chill down Logan's spine. What the hell are you? Logan growled. The third figure ignited a blade of crimson light. The desert glowed red. Logan's eyes narrowed. He had faced swords before. Guns. Tanks. Gods. But this felt different. The crimson blade hummed, vibrating through the air, and Logan felt his healing factor recoil. Not fail, but hesitate. The cloaked figure stepped forward. By order of the Emperor, the Inquisitor intoned, "You will come with us." Logan bared his teeth, muscles coiling. "Yeah," he said. "That's not gonna happen." He charged. Claws met crimson light in a shower of sparks, the impact screaming like tortured metal. The blade didn't cut clean through his claws, but it bit deep enough to send a jolt through his skeleton that made his vision blur. Logan roared and pressed forward anyway. Somewhere in the dark, the Inquisitors smiled behind their masks. The lightsaber burned. Not like fire. Not like plasma. It was cleaner than that, more deliberate. When the crimson blade slid along Logan's claws, the vibration traveled straight through his adamantium skeleton and into his skull, rattling his vision and sending a shock wave of agony through nerves that had endured far worse and survived. This was different. Logan twisted, forcing the blade away from his chest as the Inquisitor pressed in. Sand hissed and vitrified beneath the weapon's tip. The second Inquisitor circled to Logan's flank, moving with an unnatural glide that set every predator instinct he had screaming. Too coordinated. Too calm. Logan slashed outward, claws carving through the air in a wide arc. The Inquisitor leaned back impossibly far, the blade skimming Logan's knuckles and slicing cleanly through flesh. Blood sprayed, but instead of instantly closing, the wound smoked, edges cauterized. Logan hissed and ripped his hand back. "That's new," he growled. The third Inquisitor raised a gauntlet hand. The air punched Logan. Invisible force slammed into his chest and hurled him across the dune. He hit hard, skidding through sand and stone, bones cracking audibly. Pain detonated through his torso as he rolled to a stop at the base of a rock outcrop. His ribs did not immediately reset. Logan sucked in a breath and tasted copper. Force. He didn't know the word yet, but his body understood the threat. The pressure returned, pinning him in place. Not weight exactly, more like the sensation of being held underwater, lungs burning, muscles refusing to obey. The Inquisitors approached slowly, sabers ignited. Red light stroking the desert like blood across bone. "Your physiology is remarkable," one said, voice cold with fascination. "But not infinite." Logan snarled, muscles bulging as he fought the invisible grip. His healing factor burned hotter, nerves screaming as they rewired themselves under impossible strain. "You talk too much," he spat. With a roar, he surged forward. The force grip shattered like glass. Logan slammed into the nearest Inquisitor, driving him into the rocks with bone-crushing force. Claws plunged through armor, biting deep. The Inquisitor screamed as Logan tore free, black blood steaming in the night air. The second blade struck Logan's back, carving a line of fire down his spine. He staggered, roared, and spun, catching the Inquisitor across the helmet with the flat of his claws. The impact rang like a cathedral bell. The third Inquisitor stepped in, blade humming. Logan braced. Then the night shifted. A pressure rolled across the desert, not from the Inquisitors, but from somewhere far beyond them. The air seemed to bend inward, as if the world itself had leaned closer to listen. All 3 Inquisitors froze. One dropped to a knee. Another whispered, "He's aware of us." Logan felt it too. Not fear. Not exactly. Attention. The force, whatever it was, pressed against him, probing, circling, brushing against the scars in his mind. Memories flared unbidden. Weapon X, cold tables. Needles. Screams. Rage. Something observed them. The Inquisitors backed away as one, sabers lowering. This encounter is concluded, their leader said sharply. Fall back. Logan blinked, breathing hard. You're just gonna leave? The Inquisitor's helmet tilted toward him. This is no longer our hunt. They vanished into the darkness, moving with impossible speed, swallowed by shadow and sand. Logan stood alone again. His body shuddered as his healing factor finally reasserted control. Vertebrae snapped back into place. Burned tissue sloughed away and reformed. The pain faded, but not completely. Something lingered. Logan sank to one knee, claws retracting with a tired scrape. Yeah, he muttered. I felt you too. 3 systems away, aboard a Star Destroyer, drifting like a blade through space, Darth Vader stood before a holodeble wreathed in red light. The recording played again. Blaster fire. Dead stormtroopers. A figure moving through energy bolts like an animal made of steel and rage. Then, Inquisitors faltering, retreating. Vader's gloved hand tightened slowly. He resisted the Force, an Imperial intelligence officer said, voice carefully neutral. Our analysis suggests an external regenerative factor combined with a skeletal structure composed of. Enough, Vader said. The officer fell silent instantly. Vader stared at the final frozen frame. Logan, bloodied but standing, claws extended beneath twin suns. Not immune, Vader said softly. Adaptive. He turned away from the table. Prepare my shuttle. Yes, my lord. This being is not a weapon, Vader continued. Not yet. The Force stirred around him, dark and curious. Logan woke to the sound of engines. He snapped upright, claws flashing out, but found himself surrounded by low murmurs instead of blasters. Lantern light revealed a half-circle of figures cloaked in rags and scavenged armor. Refugees. Slaves. Broken people. A woman knelt closest to him, eyes wide but steady. You fought the Red Swords, she said, and lived. Logan flexed his aching hands. Didn't feel like winning. You killed the slavers, another voice said. Imperials, too. Murmurs rippled through the group. Hope. Fear. Something like awe. Logan stood slowly, towering over them. You should get out of here. Empire'll be back. The woman shook her head. They always come back. Logan looked at the faces around him, scarred, hungry, desperate. He had walked away from places like this before. His claws twitched. Tell me, he said quietly, who's in charge of hurting you? Somewhere in the galaxy, Darth Vader felt a disturbance sharpen into something dangerous. The slave pens of Krogan's Reach were buried beneath the city. Not hidden, everyone knew they were there, but sunken deep enough that the screams didn't carry far. Logan smelled them long before he saw them. Fear, filth, blood, old despair soaked into metal and stone. It clung to the walls, to the air, to the people themselves. He followed the refugees through a maintenance hatch and down a spiral ramp that twisted into darkness. Emergency lights flickered weakly, painting everything in sickly amber. They take us in groups, the woman said as they descended. Sell us to the mines, the spice pits, the shipyards. Anyone who resists, she didn't finish. Logan didn't need her to. The pens were worse than he expected. Cages stacked 3 levels high. Shock collars. Emaciated bodies slumped against bars. Droids drifted between rows, prodding prisoners with crackling batons. An Imperial crest was stamped into the floor at the center of the chamber. Not ownership, but approval. Logan stopped walking. His fists clenched so hard the metal in his knuckles creaked. Empire doesn't run this place directly, one of the refugees said quietly. They just make sure no one stops it. Logan exhaled slowly through his nose. He had promised himself, years ago, lifetimes ago, that he would stop letting anger decide things for him. That he would choose when to be the monster. But the Force, the ever-present pressure in the air, whispered now, tugging at his rage, feeding it back to him like a mirror. Logan felt it. He ignored it. Open the cages, he said. The refugees hesitated. The guards. I'll handle the guards. He didn't wait for agreement. Logan stepped into the pen corridor and tore the first droid apart with his bare hands. Metal screamed as adamantium claws ripped through plating and wiring. The second droid fired its baton. Logan caught it, yanked the machine forward, and drove his claws through its central processor. Alarms wailed. Guards poured in from both ends of the chamber. Local enforcers in patched armor backed by a squad of stormtroopers. Blaster fire lit the pens in violent flashes. Logan charged straight into it. Bolts hammered into him, burning flesh away faster than it could regenerate. He felt ribs crack again, felt a blaster strike tear into his abdomen and linger, energy disrupting muscle repair long enough to make him stumble. He roared and kept going. Logan slammed into the troopers like a living battering ram. Claws punched through armor, through visors, through bodies. He moved in tight, brutal arcs, never stopping, never giving them room to adjust. A trooper raised his rifle on stun. Logan grabbed the barrel and crushed it, then headbutt the man hard enough to drop him cold. The guards broke first. They ran. Logan let them. He turned, chest heaving, smoke rolling off his skin. The pens were quiet now, except for sobbing, whispers, the rattle of chains. Logan reached the control panel and tore it open. Sparks flew as he ripped out the locking mechanisms. Cages slid open one by one. People stared at him like he was a myth given flesh. "Get out," he said gruffly. "Find a way off-world. Don't wait for me." The woman stepped forward. "You're staying." Logan looked at the Imperial crest under his boots. "Yeah," he said. "Got unfinished business." The overseer's office sat atop the slave complex like a throne. Krogan himself was waiting when Logan kicked the door in. The hut was massive even by his species standards, flesh spilling over repulsor cushions, eyes wide with panic. Guards lay dead around him, slain by something else, something faster. "Please," Krogan gurgled. "I can pay. Credits. Ships. Slaves." Logan crossed the room in 3 steps and buried his claws in the hut's chest. The creature screamed as Logan leaned close. "You don't get to buy your way out," Logan said quietly. The force surged. Logan felt it this time, dark, eager, wrapping around his anger like a lover. It urged him to enjoy this, to make it slow. Logan snarled and tore free. Krogan died, choking on his own blood. Logan stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, claws dripping. He felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. The Empire arrived at dawn. Transports screamed overhead, disgorging stormtroopers by the platoon. Walkers advanced through the scrapyard, metal feet crushing rust and bone alike. TIE fighters screamed low passes over the city. Logan watched from a rooftop, eyes narrowed. He could leave. He knew that. Slip away into the desert, vanish like he always did. But the people below had nowhere to run. Logan dropped from the roof. He landed in front of the advancing line of stormtroopers, sand billowing around him. Blaster fire erupted instantly. Logan charged. He tore through them in a blur of motion and blood, moving faster than their targeting systems could adjust. Walkers turned their cannons on him. One blast clipped his shoulder, blowing him off his feet and leaving a crater where he'd stood. He dragged himself out of a hole, healing struggling, vision swimming. "This is getting old," he muttered. Then the sky split. A shuttle descended through the smoke, angular and black, flanked by TIEs. Its ramp lowered with a hiss. The pressure Logan had felt before returned, stronger now, crushing. A tall figure stepped out, cloaked in black, breathing like a machine. Logan met Darth Vader's gaze across the battlefield. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The first thing Logan noticed wasn't the armor. It was the silence. Blaster fire died away as Darth Vader stepped onto the sand. Stormtroopers instinctively fell back, forming a wide perimeter without being ordered to. Even the walkers powered down their weapons, as if the battlefield itself understood that something else had taken precedence. The pressure Logan had felt before now became undeniable. It wasn't weight. It wasn't fear. It was presence, an invisible gravity that bent everything toward a single point. Vader stopped 10 meters away. Logan straightened slowly, cracked vertebrae snapping back into place beneath adamantium. Smoke curled off his shoulders. His healing factor worked, but it felt watched, prodded, as if something were testing the limits of it. So, Logan said, voice rough, "You the boss." Vader's helmet tilted almost imperceptibly. "You are far from your home," Vader said. His voice was deep, mechanical, carrying effortlessly across the sand. "And you leave devastation in your wake." Logan snorted. "Yeah. Funny how that keeps happening." The Force pressed in harder. Logan felt it scrape across his mind, searching, probing, brushing against memories he'd buried under decades of blood and violence. Cold tables, needles, orders barked by men who saw him as a tool. His claws slid free with a metallic whisper. "Careful," Logan growled. "You don't want to go digging around in there." Vader's gloved hand rose slightly. Logan was yanked off his feet. The Force slammed into him from every direction, lifting him into the air like a ragdoll. His arms spread wide, claws trembling as invisible pressure crushed inward. Bones groaned. His ribs buckled. Logan roared, veins standing out along his neck as he fought against it. His healing factor flared, struggling to keep his organs from collapsing under the strain. Vader studied him calmly. "Your resilience is impressive," Vader said. "But pain has shaped you. That makes you predictable." Logan spat blood. "Buddy," he snarled, "you don't know a damn thing about me." With a feral bellow, he surged. It wasn't strength alone. It was instinct. Rage refined by survival. His body adapted mid-struggle, nerves rerouting, muscles reinforcing themselves against the invisible crush. The Force grip slipped. Logan hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up charging. Vader ignited his lightsaber. Red light flooded the battlefield. Logan met it head-on. Claws struck the blade in a shower of sparks, the impact sending a bone-shaking vibration through his skeleton. Logan pushed in close, slashing low, high, relentless. Vader parried with precision, each movement economical, devastating. A backhanded force shove sent Logan skidding across the sand again. Vader followed, faster than Logan expected, blade carving a molten line across Logan's chest. Logan screamed, not in fear, but fury, as flesh burned away down to adamantium ribs. He kept coming. Logan tackled Vader, driving him into a pile of scrap with enough force to crater Durasteel. The impact echoed across the settlement. Stormtroopers shouted, unsure whether to intervene. Vader thrust a hand forward. Logan's world imploded. The Force crushed inward, searing his nervous system, slowing his healing factor to a crawl. His muscles locked. His vision blurred. Vader rose smoothly, towering over him. "You are a weapon," Vader said. "You have always been one." Logan forced his head up, blood streaming down his face. "Yeah," he rasped. "Difference is, I decide who I cut." The Force hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. That was enough. Logan's claws snapped up and raked across Vader's chest plate. Sparks flew as adamantium met Durasteel and internal circuitry. The blow didn't pierce the armor, but it damaged it. Alarms shrieked briefly from Vader's suit. Vader staggered back one step. Only one, but it was unprecedented. Stormtroopers gasped. Vader straightened, fury radiating outward in a cold, focused wave. The sand around his boots churned. "You will kneel," Vader said. Logan dragged himself upright, every movement agony. "No gods," he growled. "No masters." The ground trembled. Vader raised his saber for the killing blow. And stopped. Something tugged at the Force again. Not resistance. Choice. Vader lowered his blade slightly. "Leave," he said. Stormtroopers stared. Logan stared. "You will not survive your next encounter," Vader continued. "But this battle is not yet finished." The pressure vanished. Logan didn't wait. He turned and ran, vanishing into smoke and fire as explosions rocked the settlement behind him. Vader watched him go, one gloved hand pressed briefly to his damaged chest plate. "A predator," he murmured. "Unbound." And for the first time in years, Darth Vader felt something uncomfortably close to respect. The Jedi kept his distance as they walked, matching Logan's pace without ever quite walking beside him. It wasn't fear. Logan could smell that easily. It was instinct, the kind learned from surviving too long in a galaxy that punished attachment. To the Empire, you're a destabilizing variable, the Jedi said at last, his voice low and steady. Not a rebel. Not a weapon they designed. Something they didn't plan for. That frightens them. Logan snorted, eyes fixed on the horizon where the desert blurred into heat and dust. Good. I like it when bullies get nervous. That's the problem, the Jedi replied. You don't just make them nervous. You force them to adapt. Logan slowed slightly as they passed between the first stone dwellings of the settlement. The air here carried the smell of cooked grain, recycled water, and old fear that never quite went away. People watched from shadows and doorways, humans, Rhodians, a few species Logan couldn't name. Their heartbeats spiked when they saw him, then steadied, then changed. Recognition. Logan felt his jaw tighten. Careful, he muttered. That look gets people killed. The Jedi followed his gaze. They've never seen anyone stand up to the Empire and survive direct contact. Yeah, Logan said. That usually ends with bodies. Usually, the Jedi agreed. But the Force reacts strongly to exceptions. That word again. The Force. Logan stopped walking. Sand crunched beneath his boots as he turned to face the Jedi fully. You keep saying that like it explains something. The Jedi hesitated, then nodded. Fair. My name is Keeler. Logan. Keeler inclined his head. The Force flows through all living things. It binds probability, intuition, cause, and effect. Even those who can't wield it still exist within its current. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You don't. Not completely. Logan raised an eyebrow. I breathe. I bleed. Seems close enough. The Force bends around you, Keeler said. Like water around sharpened metal. You don't draw on it, and it doesn't guide you, but it reacts to you. That's rare. Disturbing. Logan barked a humorless laugh. Join the club. They resumed walking. A child darted across the path ahead of them, then stopped abruptly, staring at Logan with open fascination instead of fear. Logan froze without meaning to. The child didn't run. Keeler noticed. They sense what you are. Don't, Logan said sharply. The child's mother hurried over, pulling them back with whispered apologies. Logan watched them retreat, something heavy settling in his chest. I've seen that look before, he said quietly. People think you're the answer. You stop being human real fast after that. Keeler didn't argue. Vader felt it too. That snapped Logan's attention back hard. He what? The moment you resisted him, Keeler said. Not defiance. Adaptation. You didn't fight the Force. You endured it. Then your body changed how it responded. Logan remembered the crushing pressure, the way his healing factor had burned blindly at first, then recalibrated, slowed, hardened, learned. Yeah, Logan muttered. That's kind of my thing. It's why he let you go, Keeler continued. Not mercy. Assessment. Vader doesn't ignore threats. He studies them. Logan stopped again, turning toward the settlement behind them. People were already moving faster now, packing belongings, dismantling what little they owned. They weren't waiting for orders. They were assuming. He hated that. So this is the part where you tell me to disappear, Logan said. No, Keeler replied. This is the part where I tell you the truth. Logan crossed his arms. I'm listening. Vader will come, Keeler said. Not with inquisitors. Not with hunters. He'll come prepared. With contingencies designed to overwhelm your healing, disrupt your nervous system, and isolate you from anyone you might protect. Logan's eyes narrowed. You've thought this through. I've seen what he does to variables, Keeler said quietly. And you're still standing? Barely. Logan considered that. Then, so if I leave, he'll keep hunting me. And if I stay, he'll strike here, Keeler finished. Sooner rather than later. Logan looked back at the settlement. Either way, these people get burned. Eventually, Keeler said. Unless you change the equation. The Force stirred faintly around them, not dark, not light, tense, alert, like an audience holding its breath. You want me to draw him, Logan said. I want you to choose where, Keeler replied. He gestured toward the distant canyon line barely visible through the haze. There's an old Imperial relay station north of here. Abandoned after a collapse. Still has a functioning signal backbone and automated distress protocols. Logan exhaled slowly. You want me to light a beacon? Yes. And when he comes, Logan said, this stops being about the settlement. Keeler nodded. It becomes about you. Logan stared at the desert for a long moment. He'd walked away from places like this before. Different planets. Same excuses. Survival over responsibility. Distance over consequence. He was tired of running. You coming with me? Logan asked. Keeler shook his head. If I do, Vader will feel it. And he'll bring everything at once. Logan smirked faintly. Can't have that. I'll lead them away as long as I can, Keeler said. Give you time. Logan turned to face him fully. You might not survive that. Keeler met his gaze. Neither might you. They stood there for a moment. Two survivors measuring odds neither believed in. Get them out, Logan said finally, nodding toward the settlement. Far as you can. Keeler inclined his head again, deeper this time. If you live through what's coming, the Force will remember you. Logan flexed his hands, adamantium whispering beneath skin. It already does. He turned and walked into the desert alone, toward the canyon, toward the relay station, toward the collision he could already feel tightening the galaxy around him like a fist. High above, Imperial sensor arrays quietly recalibrated, and Darth Vader began to plan. The canyon opened like a wound in the earth. Jagged stone walls plunged downward, swallowing sound and light as Logan descended along a narrow switchback carved into the rock. The air grew cooler the deeper he went, heavy with mineral dust and the faint tang of ozone, old power lines still humming somewhere below. Logan felt it before he saw it. The Force pressed closer here, concentrated, disturbed. Not watching this time, asterisk anticipating star. The relay station sat embedded in the canyon wall like a parasite. Half-collapsed durasteel jutting from stone, its original Imperial insignia scorched and pitted by time. Antenna spires lay snapped and tangled, but Logan could hear it clearly now, the low electrical whine of systems that had never fully shut down. Yeah, he muttered. You're still breathing. He climbed the final stretch hand over hand, claws biting into rock when footholds failed, then hauled himself onto a warped landing platform coated in dust and old scorch marks. Blaster impacts. Explosives. A fight long ago that hadn't ended cleanly. Fitting. Inside, the station was dark except for intermittent red emergency lights pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Logan's footsteps echoed down the corridor as he moved in, senses stretched to their limits. The smell of old fear lingered here too, Imperial fear, sharp and disciplined, layered with something older and worse. He followed the hum to the control chamber. The console was mostly intact, a mess of cracked displays and exposed wiring. Imperial Standard. Logan didn't know the language, but he didn't need to. The interface was built for efficiency, not mystery. He slammed his claws into the console and ripped the casing open. Sparks flew. Systems screamed to life. Warning symbols flared across the main display. Distress protocols. Beacon activation. System-wide emergency broadcast. Logan hesitated for exactly 1 second. Then he drove his claws deeper and twisted. The relay station howled. A pulse ripped outward through hyperspace lanes and subspace channels, screaming its existence across the sector. Imperial frequencies. Inquisitor channels. Automated threat classification algorithms lighting up all at once. Anomalous biological entity. Extreme threat potential. Priority red. Logan stepped back as the console overloaded, smoke pouring from ruptured conduits. The beacon wouldn't last long, not with damage like this, but it didn't need to. It just needed to be loud. The canyon trembled. Logan felt it immediately. The shift in the Force, the way attention snapped toward him from across the stars. Not curiosity this time. Focus. He rolled his shoulders, wincing as old scars protested. His healing factor surged, reinforcing muscle and bone, adapting preemptively. It knew what was coming, even if he didn't. All right, Logan said softly. Let's get this over with. The first dropships arrived within the hour. Imperial shuttles screamed down into the canyon, repulsors blasting sand and stone outward in violent waves. Stormtroopers poured out in disciplined formations, scanners sweeping, heavy weapons locking into place. Logan didn't hide. He walked out onto the platform as blaster fire erupted instantly. Bolts hammered into him, ripping chunks of flesh away, sending him staggering back against the canyon wall. He laughed through gritted teeth and charged. The fight was brutal and fast. Logan moved through the troopers like a living storm, claws carving through armor, through weapons, through bodies. Explosives detonated against him, tearing him apart in sprays of blood and metal, only for him to keep coming, regeneration straining but holding. Then the tactics changed. Heavy stun fields activated, overlapping grids of crackling blue energy slamming into him from multiple angles. Logan screamed as his nervous system locked up, muscles seizing hard enough to crack bone. He collapsed to one knee, vision swimming. Adaptive response. An Imperial officer barked over comms. Increase output. Logan forced himself upright, veins standing out like cables. His healing factor learning again. Rewiring, compensating. Burning itself raw to overcome the paralysis. The stun field flickered. He surged forward. The troopers broke. More ships descended. AT-STS clambered into firing positions along the canyon rim, cannons swiveling down toward him. Logan barely had time to brace before the first barrage hit. The world exploded. Stone shattered. Metal screamed. Logan was buried under tons of debris, crushed into the canyon floor as walker fire reduced the platform to rubble. For a long moment, nothing moved. Imperial scanners swept the wreckage. Target neutralized, someone reported, uncertain. Then the debris shifted. Metal groaned. Stone cracked. Logan erupted from the rubble with a roar, body mangled beyond recognition. Skeleton exposed in places where flesh hadn't yet regrown. His healing factor burned like a furnace, dragging him back from the edge through sheer refusal. The walkers opened fire again. And then, everything stopped. The force collapsed inward. Stormtroopers froze mid-motion, blasters trembling in their hands. Walkers shuddered as if gripped by invisible claws. Sand lifted from the canyon floor, spiraling upward in slow, impossible arcs. A shuttle descended through the chaos, black against the pale sky. Its ramp lowered. Darth Vader stepped out. Logan straightened, bones snapping back into place. Flesh crawling over adamantium as he locked eyes with the dark figure across the ruined canyon. So Logan rasped, "You planned ahead this time." Vader's presence crushed down on him like a mountain. "Yes," Vader said. "And so did you." The force surged, and the canyon became a battleground the galaxy would never forget. The force hit Logan like a collapsing star. It wasn't the blunt, crushing grip Vader had used before. This was layered. Precise. Fields within fields, pressure applied not just to muscle and bone, but to the process of healing itself. Logan felt his regeneration stumble, misfire, then surge again in defiance, cells burning themselves raw to keep him standing. He dug his boots into the canyon floor and snarled, claws sliding free with a metallic scream that echoed off the stone walls. Still standing, Logan rasped, "Guess your mat's off." Vader didn't move. Stormtroopers backed away instinctively, some stumbling as the gravity of the moment pressed down on them. Even the walkers fell silent, cannons lowering without command. This was no longer a battlefield. It was an execution ground. "You are persistent," Vader said. "But persistence without direction is merely instinct." Logan took a step forward. The sand beneath his boots liquefied, pulled inward by invisible forces. He pushed through it anyway, every nerve screaming as Vader tightened his control. "You talk like someone who's forgotten what choice feels like," Logan shot back. Vader raised his hand. Logan flew. He smashed into the canyon wall hard enough to crater stone, the impact driving the air from his lungs. His spine shattered in 3 places. His vision went white. For half a second, just half, his healing factor failed to respond. Logan tasted panic. Then it roared back to life, rebuilding him violently. Bones snapping back into place, nerves rethreading themselves through sheer biological fury. He ripped himself free from the stone and dropped to one knee, gasping. Vader was already there. The red blade ignited between them, close enough that Logan felt heat kiss his face. Vader swung, not to kill, but to measure. The saber carved across Logan's forearm, burning through flesh to adamantium and lingering there, disrupting regeneration so completely Logan felt his hand go numb. Logan roared and slammed his claws into Vader's chest again. This time, something gave. Not armor, systems. The impact sent a tremor through Vader's suit, lights flickering, respirator hitching for a fraction of a second before stabilizing. Vader staggered back one step. Again. The force flared in response, violent and furious. "You adapt faster than anticipated," Vader said, voice colder now. "But adaptation has limits." Logan wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. "So does control." He lunged. The two collided in a brutal exchange that shattered the canyon floor. Logan fought dirty, low strikes, grapples, body weight, forcing proximity where Vader's reach advantage diminished. Vader countered with ruthless precision, every movement calculated, force-assisted blows landing with the weight of starship collisions. A force-enhanced strike crushed Logan's ribs inward, puncturing a lung. He coughed blood and laughed through it, hooking an arm around Vader's shoulder and driving his claws into the canyon wall to anchor himself. "You ever fight someone," Logan growled, "who just won't stop?" Vader's response was immediate. The force surged inward, not crushing this time, but pulling. Logan felt something tear loose inside him. Not organs, not bone, but memory. Weapon X, cold steel restraints. The moment he'd realized he was never meant to be a man again. Rage exploded outward. The force recoiled. For the first time, Vader took a full step back. Not in retreat. In recalculation. "You are driven by pain," Vader said. "That makes you exploitable." Logan staggered upright, chest heaving, wounds closing slowly, now under sustained force pressure. "You keep saying that like pain ever stopped me." Vader extended both hands. The canyon screamed. Stone walls began to collapse inward, tons of rock shearing loose, as gravity warped violently around Logan. He was buried again, crushed under the weight of the canyon itself, his body breaking repeatedly under impossible strain. His healing factor screamed. For long seconds, nothing emerged. Stormtroopers watched in stunned silence. Then movement. Metal pierced stone. Claws tore free. Logan dragged himself out of the collapse, body ruined beyond recognition, skeleton exposed, muscles half-formed and knitting even as more rock fell. His regeneration slowed visibly now, struggling under the sustained assault, but it did not stop. He rose. The force shuddered. Vader stared at him, something dark and dangerous tightening behind the lenses of his mask. "You should not exist," Vader said. Logan straightened, blood steaming in the cold canyon air. "Yeah," he said hoarsely. "I get that a lot." Above them, Imperial sensors spiked wildly. Something else had felt the clash. Something ancient. And far away, beyond the canyon and the ships and the stormtroopers frozen in terror, the galaxy leaned closer to watch. The canyon could no longer contain what was happening inside it. Stone continued to shear and buckle, as if reality itself were being bent and twisted between Logan and Vader. The air vibrated with invisible force, dust lifting in spirals that refused to fall, fragments of rock hanging suspended as gravity lost its certainty. Logan stood at the center of it, barely recognizable. His body was a patchwork of exposed adamantium, half-regrown muscle and scorched skin. One eye had healed unevenly, vision still blurring at the edges. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle, bone rebuilding itself with wet, grinding sounds. Each breath rattled through damaged lungs that refused to fully stabilize. And still, he stood. Vader advanced. This time, he didn't ignite his saber. The force gathered around him in a dense, suffocating presence, coiling like a storm ready to break. Logan felt it probing deeper now, not just pressing on his body, but threading into the gaps where his healing factor lagged. exploiting every fraction of a second where regeneration fell behind destruction. You endure, Vader said, but you do not evolve. Logan laughed weakly. You kidding? I've been evolving my whole damn life. He charged again. Vader met him halfway, not with steel, but with intent. The Force slammed into Logan from all sides, compressing him inward, folding muscle against bone, bone against metal. His healing factor surged in frantic overdrive, cells burning themselves out as fast as they were replaced. Pain drowned everything else. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Logan felt something dangerously close to failure. Not death. Stasis. His regeneration slowed to a crawl, overwhelmed by sustained force pressure that disrupted nerve signaling and cellular cohesion. His body fought, adapted, rewired, but it was losing ground. Vader closed the distance and seized Logan by the throat. Logan's feet lifted from the ground. The canyon went silent. You mistake defiance for freedom, Vader said, lifting Logan higher. You are bound to violence, shaped by it. It is all you are. Logan clawed at Vader's wrist, metal scraping against durasteel, strength fading as oxygen deprivation set in. His vision darkened. His ears rang. Images flooded his mind, unwanted, invasive. A boy in a cold room, hands strapped to metal. A voice saying this will hurt. The Force dragged it all to the surface, twisting memory into leverage. Something inside Logan snapped. Not rage. Resolve. His healing factor did something new. Instead of accelerating blindly, it shut down non-essential systems. Pain receptors dulled. Oxygen consumption dropped. Muscles compacted, reinforcing around the adamantium frame like armor grown from flesh. Logan went limp. Vader paused, confused for the briefest instant. Logan's eyes snapped open. He drove his claws straight into Vader's forearm. The impact was violent enough to send a shockwave rippling through the Force itself. Vader released him with a sharp exhale as alarms blared from his suit, systems compensating, rerouting. Logan hit the ground hard, rolled, and came up inside Vader's guard. This time, he didn't aim for armor. He aimed for leverage. Logan slammed his shoulder into Vader's chest, wrapped his arms around him, and jumped, using his own body weight and the collapsing canyon wall behind them. They fell together. Stone gave way as both figures plunged through shattered rock into a lower cavern, smashing into the ground in an explosion of debris. The impact reverberated outward, knocking troopers off their feet above. Logan lay still for a second, body screaming as his healing factor struggled to reboot systems he'd forcibly suppressed. Vader rose first. His armor was visibly damaged now, scoring across the chest plate, exposed cabling sparking along one shoulder. His breathing was harsher, uneven, but his presence was unchanged. Relentless. You adapt, Vader said, stepping toward Logan. But you do not learn. Logan forced himself upright, swaying. Funny, he rasped. I was going to say the same thing. Vader ignited his saber at last. The red blade lit the cavern like a bleeding star. This ends now, Vader said. Logan felt it then. Not from Vader. From above. A ripple passed through the Force, vast and ancient, like something turning over in its sleep. The pressure changed, not heavier, but broader, as if other eyes had opened. Vader felt it too. His helmet tilted slightly, attention fracturing for a heartbeat. That heartbeat was all Logan needed. He lunged, not at Vader, but at the cavern ceiling. Claws punched into stone and metal supports. Logan ripped downward with everything he had left. The damaged relay station above screamed in protest as structural failure cascaded. The cavern began to collapse. Vader thrust out with the Force, holding the ceiling in place, but doing so divided his focus. Stone shuddered violently, cracks racing outward. Logan staggered backward, blood pouring from his nose, ears, eyes. You want me, he snarled. You gotta come through this. The ceiling gave way. Logan dove. The world collapsed in fire and stone behind him as he tore his way through a collapsing tunnel, body breaking and reforming in brutal cycles. He burst out onto the canyon floor amid dust and chaos as the relay station imploded entirely, burying Vader beneath thousands of tons of rock and twisted durasteel. Imperial forces panicked. Orders screamed over comms. Walkers staggered back. Ships pulled away as seismic alarms wailed. Logan collapsed to one knee in the open canyon, barely holding himself together now. His healing factor slowed visibly, struggling after sustained overload. His hands shook. His vision tunneled. But he was alive. He looked at the ruin behind him. "I told you," he whispered hoarsely. "I don't stop." Deep beneath the rubble, stone cracked. And Darth Vader smiled behind his mask. The galaxy would remember this day, not as a victory or a defeat, but as the moment something new refused to die. The dust didn't settle for a long time. It hung in the canyon like a choking fog, fine particles grinding between Logan's teeth as he dragged himself farther from the collapse. Every movement sent a fresh wave of pain through his body. His healing factor was still working, but it was no longer the roaring engine he'd relied on his entire life. It felt strained, overtaxed, like a muscle pushed past endurance. That scared him more than Vader ever had. Logan collapsed against a slanted slab of stone and let his head fall back. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. One lung still hadn't fully reinflated. His left arm trembled uncontrollably, nerves misfiring as regeneration tried to recalibrate after deliberate shutdown. "Not dead yet," he muttered, more to convince himself than anything else. Above him, the canyon was chaos. Imperial formations had shattered. Stormtroopers scrambled for footing, some abandoning firing positions entirely as seismic aftershocks rippled through the ground. Walkers withdrew from the canyon rim, pilots struggling to keep their machines upright as the terrain destabilized. Logan could hear shouted orders through the dust, confused, overlapping, panicked. Vader's presence was still there, buried, suppressed, but not gone. The force around the canyon felt wrong now, disturbed in a way Logan had never experienced before. It wasn't just dark or light, it was agitated, as if something ancient had been stirred and didn't appreciate being woken violently. Logan forced himself upright, using the stone for leverage. His legs nearly gave out. He caught himself, claws punching into rock to keep from falling. He needed to move. Staying meant getting boxed in once Imperial command regained control. Leaving meant surviving long enough to matter again. He staggered down the canyon floor, keeping low, following instinct and the faint pull of fresh air. His senses were dulled, overloaded from hours of sustained trauma, but they still worked well enough to warn him when something shifted behind him. Stone cracked. A deep, grinding sound echoed from beneath the collapsed relay station. Logan froze. For a moment, just one, he considered going back, digging, finishing it. Then the ground shuddered again, harder this time, and a pulse rippled outward through the force that made his teeth ache. Logan turned away. "Yeah," he said hoarsely. "Didn't think so." He broke into a limping run as best he could, pushing his body through protest and failure, forcing his healing factor to prioritize movement over perfection. Flesh regrew sloppily now, scars lingering longer than they should have. He didn't care. Scars were familiar. By the time he reached the canyon's mouth, the sky had darkened with Imperial traffic. Shuttles streaked overhead, moving not toward him, but away. A tactical withdrawal. That told him everything. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Too fast. Logan didn't hear it in words, not at first. He felt it in the way the force shifted whenever he passed through populated space. A tightening, a flinch, like a crowd leaning away from something dangerous moving through their midst. By the time he reached the edge of the desert settlement again, now mostly abandoned, rumors had already arrived ahead of him. A man who fought Vader and lived. A monster that couldn't be killed. A curse that drew the Empire like blood in water. Mira met him at the edge of town, relief and fear warring openly on her face. "You're alive," she said. Logan shrugged weakly. "So far." She stared at him, eyes tracing the scars that hadn't faded, the way his posture listed slightly to one side, as if his skeleton hadn't quite agreed on its final shape yet. "What did you do?" she asked. Logan looked back toward the distant canyon, where faint smoke still climbed into the sky. I made a mess. Mira swallowed. The Empire pulled back. Not just here. System-wide. Patrols are rerouting. Garrison commands are quiet. Logan frowned. That didn't fit. They don't do quiet, he said. No, she agreed. They do planning. That sat heavy between them. Mira gestured toward the few remaining transports warming up on makeshift pads. We're leaving. All of us. Keeler's people too. He sent word. Logan felt a flicker of relief he hadn't expected. Good. You're not coming, Mira said. Not a question. Logan shook his head. I can't. Because of him, she said softly. Logan didn't answer. Mira stepped closer. You could run. Disappear. Plenty of places the Empire doesn't bother looking. Logan met her gaze. They will if I'm there. She looked away first. Then what are you going to do? She asked. Logan considered the question. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he didn't have an immediate answer. I'm going to keep moving, he said finally. Keep them focused on me. Long as they're chasing me, they're not crushing places like this. Myra's jaw tightened. That makes you a shield. Logan smirked faintly. Been worse things. She reached out, hesitated, then clasped his forearm. Her grip was firm, grateful, human. Whatever you are, she said, you gave us time. Logan nodded once. Use it. Far from the desert world, deep within Imperial space, Darth Vader stood alone in the med bay of his flagship. Servitors worked silently around him, sealing fractures in armor, rerouting damaged systems, reinforcing structural weak points exposed by adamantium strikes. His breathing was steady again, controlled, but beneath it something simmered. On a nearby holo-display, tactical projections replayed the canyon engagement from dozens of angles. Slow-motion breakdowns, force flow analysis, biological adaptation curves. Vader studied them all. The subject's regeneration is no longer linear, an officer reported cautiously. Sustained force interference induces diminishing returns. However, the subject compensates through voluntary suppression and structural reinforcement. Vader's gloved hand curled slowly. He learns, Vader said. Yes, my lord. Then we will escalate. Vader turned from the display, staring out into hyperspace as stars stretched into endless lines. Deploy assets beyond conventional doctrine, he continued. Null field research divisions, ancient archives, anything that documents biological resilience outside force paradigms. The officer hesitated. And the Inquisitors? They failed, Vader said flatly. This is no longer their hunt. The Force stirred around him, dark and intent. Prepare the galaxy, Vader said. The next time we meet, adaptation will not be enough. Logan felt it hours later, like a pressure headache that wouldn't quite form. He paused at the edge of the spaceport, watching transports lift off with people who now had a chance because he'd stayed behind. His healing factor finally stabilized, scars fading slowly, reluctantly, as if remembering the damage instead of erasing it. He flexed his hands. Still metal. Still him. But something had changed. He could feel the galaxy paying attention now. And for the first time in a long while, Logan realized he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was choosing. Somewhere out there, the Empire was preparing something meant to end him. Logan bared his teeth in a tired, dangerous grin. Good, he muttered, and turned toward the stars. Logan didn't take a ship. He stayed off established hyperspace lanes, moving the old-fashioned way, freighters that didn't ask questions, cargo holds that smelled like oil and desperation, jumps that never followed the same vector twice. He paid when he had credits, fought when he didn't, and vanished before anyone could decide whether turning him in would be worth the risk. It never was. Word followed him anyway. On fringe worlds and forgotten stations, whispers spread ahead of his arrival. A man who bled metal. A creature who fought the Emperor's shadow and walked away. Some called him a demon, others a myth. A few, usually the desperate ones, called him a warning. Logan ignored all of it. He learned quickly which places the Empire leaned on hardest. Mining colonies stripped to bone. Agricultural worlds taxed into famine. spaceports where stormtroopers stood on every corner, and fear did most of the policing for them. He showed up in those places. Never announced. Never stayed long. Just enough time to break something important. A labor camp's shock grid torn out overnight. A garrison's armory left empty and smoking. An Inquisitor's probe team found dismantled, bodies stacked neatly like a message. The Empire responded the only way it knew how. It tightened its grip. Every time Logan struck, patrol density increased elsewhere. Curfews were enforced harder. Reprisals came faster. The machine adapted, absorbing losses and redistributing force with cold efficiency. Logan noticed. That was the part that started to eat at him. On a refinery moon orbiting a dying star, he tore through a squad of troopers guarding an ore shipment and watched workers scatter into the dark. He barely felt the blaster burns anymore. His healing factor had settled into a new rhythm, slower but tougher, prioritizing structural integrity over speed. When it was over, an old Duros man stared at him from behind a loader droid. "They'll come back," the man said, "and they'll punish us." Logan wiped blood from his claws. They already were. The man shook his head. "Not like this." Logan didn't answer. He left before dawn. The pattern repeated, over and over. Each intervention saved lives in the moment and tightened the Empire's resolve in the long run. Logan had spent his life breaking weapons. He knew what escalation looked like. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if being a better weapon actually helped. The Jedi found him again on NAR Shada. Logan smelled Keeler before he saw him. Ozone and old robes. Fear kept tightly leashed. They met on a rain-slicked landing platform overlooking the endless vertical sprawl of the smuggler's moon. "You're making things worse," Keeler said without preamble. Logan leaned against a crate, watching traffic weave between towers. "Funny. That's exactly what the Empire says." Keeler stepped closer. "You draw attention. The Empire responds with collective punishment. They don't see individuals. They see leverage." "So what?" Logan snapped. "I'm supposed to stop?" "I'm saying you need to think," Keeler replied sharply. "You're fighting a system, not an enemy. Systems don't feel pain." Logan pushed off the crate. "Tell that to the people I pulled out of cages. And tell it to the ones who died afterward." Keeler shot back. Silence fell between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Keeler exhaled. "The Force is shifting around you. Not toward light or dark, toward conflict. You're becoming a focal point." Logan looked out over NAR Shada's endless lights. "I didn't ask for that." "Neither did the galaxy," Keeler said softly. Logan turned back to him. "Then give me another option." Keeler hesitated. "There may be one." That got Logan's attention. "There are things older than the Empire," Keeler continued. "Hidden archives. Neutral zones. Places where the Force behaves differently." "Let me guess," Logan said. "Some ancient Jedi cave full of glowing rocks." Keeler almost smiled. "Something like that. Except the Empire doesn't fully understand it yet." Logan's eyes narrowed. "And Vader?" Keeler's expression hardened. "Vader is already searching, which means time is short." Logan considered that, then nodded once. "All right. Show me." Deep within Imperial space, Vader watched a different projection now. Not Logan, but the wake he left behind. Economic disruptions. Morale fractures. Localized resistance flaring unpredictably. Nothing that threatened the Empire's core, but enough to irritate it. Enough to demand correction. "The subject is no longer merely reactive," an analyst reported. "He is influencing behavioral patterns across multiple sectors." Vader said nothing. "He is becoming a symbol," the analyst continued. "Uncontrolled." Vader raised a hand. The analyst fell silent. "Symbols can be broken," Vader said. He turned toward a holomap highlighting a cluster of systems marked with ancient glyphs and red warnings. "Prepare Task Force Obsidian," Vader ordered. "And authorize deployment of null field assets." A pause. Then quieter. "I will handle him personally." The Force coiled around Vader, dark and patient. Logan felt the shift days later, like a storm building just beyond the horizon. He stood at the viewport of a borrowed freighter, stars streaking past as they jumped again, and flexed his hand slowly. His scars were fewer now, but they felt remembered, as if his body had decided not to forget certain lessons. Keeler stood nearby, silent. "They're coming," Logan said. Keeler nodded. "Yes." Logan exhaled, steadying himself. Good. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he wasn't reacting anymore. He was preparing. And somewhere between stars and shadow, the Empire prepared to answer him with something far worse than Vader's blade. The world Keeler brought him to didn't have a name anyone used anymore. Imperial charts marked it as a dead system, no viable resources, unstable orbital debris, abnormal gravitational readings that made standard hyperspace exits unreliable. Smugglers avoided it. Patrols ignored it. Even the Hutts left it alone. That alone told Logan it mattered. The planet itself was gray and jagged, its surface split by immense ravines that cut like scars across the crust. Ancient stone spires jutted upward at impossible angles, worn smooth by time but not by neglect. The air was thin, cold, and charged with something Logan felt immediately, a pressure that wasn't hostile, but heavy, like a held breath that had lasted centuries. The force was different here. Not louder, not quieter, older. Logan stepped off the freighter's ramp and paused, boots crunching against black stone dust. His healing factor stirred uneasily, not resisting, not surging. Asterisk listening star. That alone unsettled him. Keeler came down behind him, visibly tense. This place predates the Republic. Predates the Jedi Order as you'd recognize it. Logan glanced at him. You guys always say that right before things go sideways. Keeler didn't smile. This is where Jedi brought problems they couldn't destroy. Logan looked around. Comforting. They moved deeper into the ravine, following a path that felt less carved than remembered. Logan noticed the absence of life. No insects, no birds, no distant heartbeats. The planet wasn't dead. It was quiet, as if something had told it to be. The structure revealed itself slowly. A massive stone complex embedded directly into the canyon wall, its geometry wrong in subtle ways that made Logan's eyes ache if he stared too long. No lights. No doors. Just an opening shaped like a wound torn into the rock. Keeler stopped at the threshold. Beyond this point, he said carefully, the Force doesn't behave as we expect. It doesn't align to light or dark. It reacts to intent. Logan flexed his hands. That's usually when I do my best work. They entered. The temperature dropped instantly. Logan's breath fogged as they moved through a vast chamber filled with monolithic pillars etched with symbols that made his skull buzz faintly. The air smelled metallic, old, and clean in a way that reminded him uncomfortably of operating rooms. Weapon X. He clenched his jaw and kept walking. At the center of the chamber was a circular depression carved into the floor. Smooth, deliberate, like a place meant for something to stand or be placed. Logan stopped without realizing it. His healing factor flared, then steadied, then slowed. Not weakened. Regulated. Keeler felt it too. He sucked in a sharp breath. It's responding to you. Logan looked down at his hands. The adamantium beneath his skin felt heavy, anchored, as if the metal itself had found resonance with the stone beneath his feet. Yeah, Logan said quietly. Feels like it wants me to stay. That's not how this works, Keeler said, unsettled. This sight dampens Force expression. It shouldn't. The chamber shifted. Not physically. Perceptually. Logan felt the walls pull farther away, the ceiling recede, the space expanding not in distance, but in meaning. His memories pressed closer, like they'd been invited. A voice echoed, not spoken, not heard. Endurance is not immunity. Logan's claws slid halfway out on reflex. I didn't say anything. Keeler backed away a step. I didn't either. The Force surged, not violent, but vast. Images slammed into Logan without warning. Not visions of the future. Not prophecy. Assessment. His body as it had been broken. His skeleton reforged. His healing factor adapting, compensating, surviving. Then something new. Something Vader had been circling but hadn't named. Stability. Logan dropped to one knee as the pressure increased, not crushing but aligning. His regeneration slowed further, then locked into a steady, controlled cadence. Pain dulled. Not vanished. Asterisk filed down star. Keeler stared. It's anchoring you. Logan forced himself upright, breathing hard. Anchoring me to what? The answer came from above. The Force screamed. The chamber shook as a violent presence tore into the system, hyperspace rupturing like a wound in reality. Logan felt it instantly, colder, sharper, disciplined to the point of cruelty. Vader. The ancient sight reacted immediately. The symbols along the pillars ignited with dull white light, not resisting the intrusion, but bracing against it. Keeler swore. He shouldn't be able to. He planned for it, Logan said, teeth bared. The ceiling split open as a shuttle forced its way through atmosphere and stone alike, repulsors screaming as it descended directly into the ravine outside the chamber. Imperial signatures flooded the Force, stormtroopers, specialized units, something heavier behind them. Null fields. Logan felt it like ice sliding across his nerves. Those are for you, Keeler said grimly. Localized Force suppression. Logan cracked his neck. Figures. The chamber darkened as shadows stretched inward, Vader's presence bleeding through the stone like ink in water. His voice echoed before he appeared. You sought refuge in the past, Vader said. But the past offers no shelter. Logan stepped forward, planting his boots in the circular depression without thinking. The stone beneath him pulsed once, steady and deep. Funny, Logan growled. I was about to say the same thing to you. The entrance exploded inward as Vader advanced, red blade igniting, null field generators humming as they deployed along the chamber walls. The Force constricted. Logan felt his healing factor slow, then stabilize. Not weakened. Focused. Vader stopped at the threshold, visor fixed on Logan. You chose the wrong ground, Vader said. Logan's claws slid fully free, adamantium singing in the charged air. No, Logan replied. I chose the one you don't understand. The ancient chamber sealed behind them, and the galaxy held its breath once more. The null fields came online, with a sound Logan felt more than heard. A low, invasive hum crawled through the chamber, pressing against his skull, sliding under his skin like cold needles. The Force recoiled violently, its presence snapping and fragmenting as localized suppression grids locked into place. Keeler gasped, staggering backward as if the air itself had turned against him. Logan barely moved. His healing factor slowed another fraction, not failing, not panicking, but settling into that same measured rhythm the ancient sight had imposed. It didn't feel like being drained. It felt like being anchored, his biology refusing to overextend, refusing to burn itself out just to survive another second. Vader stepped fully into the chamber. The red blade cast long, jagged shadows across the pillars, their symbols glowing faintly in response, neither resisting nor yielding. Stormtroopers halted at the entrance, weapons raised but unmoving, as if something in the room warned them not to cross the threshold. This place was built to contain what the Jedi feared, Vader said, and yet you stand at its center. Logan rolled his shoulders, feeling the strange stability settle deeper into his bones. Story of my life. Vader advanced, saber held low and ready. The Force around him was muted here, but not gone, compressed, sharpened, controlled with terrifying discipline. Each step he took carried intent, every movement deliberate. Logan moved first. He didn't charge blindly this time. He closed distance in a tight, controlled rush, forcing proximity before Vader could fully bring the Force to bear. His claws struck the red blade in a cascade of sparks, the impact sending controlled vibrations through his skeleton instead of the bone-rattling shock he'd felt before. The ancient floor beneath his boots absorbed the recoil. Vader adjusted instantly, pivoting, countering with a Force-assisted strike that slammed into Logan's side hard enough to crack stone. Logan grunted, ribs fracturing, but they didn't collapse inward. His body redistributed the Force, damage spreading evenly instead of catastrophically. Adaptation. They clashed again, faster now, movements blurring as adamantium met lightsaber, brute instinct colliding with ruthless precision. Vader fought differently here. Less overwhelming pressure, more surgical force application, exploiting every opening, every fraction of lag in Logan's regeneration. Logan responded in kind. He grappled, used his weight, his skeleton, the environment. He slammed Vader into a pillar hard enough to shatter stone, then followed with a savage elbow that dented durasteel and sent warning tones chirping from Vader's suit. The force surged in response, but the chamber dampened it, redirecting the energy into the glyphs along the walls. The ancient site absorbed excess power, bleeding it away like a pressure valve. Vader noticed. "You align with containment," Vader said. "Interesting." Logan spat blood onto the floor. "I don't break easy." Vader raised his hand, fingers curling. The null field generators spiked. Logan felt it immediately, an attempt to collapse his regeneration entirely, to freeze cellular repair and leave him vulnerable. His healing factor faltered, pain roaring back as damaged tissue refused to knit. Then the stone beneath his feet pulsed again. The suppression field bent, not breaking, but competing, as the ancient structure asserted its own rules. Logan's regeneration didn't stop. It slowed further, becoming denser, tougher, prioritizing function over perfection. Scars formed and stayed. Vader tilted his helmet slightly. "You are changing." Logan lunged. He drove his claws into Vader's shoulder joint, aiming for exposed cabling, and felt resistance give way. Sparks exploded as systems shorted. Vader retaliated instantly, blade carving across Logan's torso, burning deep enough to expose adamantium ribs and disrupt regeneration entirely in that region. Logan screamed and kept moving. He wrapped an arm around Vader's neck, locking his adamantium forearm across the respirator housing, and pulled. Alarms blared as Vader's breathing stuttered, the sound ragged and uneven. For the first time, Vader struggled. The force flared violently as he tried to tear Logan free, but the chamber absorbed the surge, siphoning off excess power. Stone cracked. Symbols flared brighter. Keeler watched from the edge, barely able to breathe under the null field pressure. "Logan, this place won't hold forever." Logan heard him dimly. His focus narrowed to the figure in his grasp, to the weight, the resistance, the certainty that this was as close as he was ever going to get. "You wanted to break me," Logan growled into Vader's ear. "Should have tried harder." Vader's response was immediate and brutal. The force inverted. Instead of pushing outward, it collapsed inward, bypassing the chamber's dampening by compressing rather than expanding. Logan felt a crush into his nervous system, disrupting synaptic pathways, scrambling pain signals and motor control all at once. His grip loosened. Vader tore free and hurled Logan across the chamber with enough force to crater the far wall. Logan hit hard, body shattering, regeneration stalling under the compounded assault. He lay still, vision fading, the hum of the null fields growing distant. Vader stood over him, damaged but unbroken, red blade humming steadily. "This ends now," Vader said. Logan forced one eye open. The stone beneath him pulsed again, weakly this time. He laughed, blood bubbling from his lips. "Yeah," he rasped. "That's what they always say." With the last of his strength, Logan slammed his claws into the chamber floor and tore. Not at Vader, at the site itself. The ancient glyphs flared blinding white as containment protocols triggered violently, power surging through the structure in a desperate attempt to stabilize. The null fields overloaded, feedback rippling outward in a catastrophic wave. The force screamed. Stone exploded. Light consumed the chamber. Keeler shielded his eyes as the world tore itself apart. When the light faded, the chamber was gone, collapsed into a molten ruin of fused stone and metal, its purpose fulfilled at last. Logan lay at the center of it, unconscious but breathing, his healing factor reduced to a faint, stubborn pulse. Vader stood at the edge of the devastation, cloak torn, armor scorched, one arm hanging stiffly at his side. They stared at each other across the ruin, neither victorious, neither finished. The galaxy would feel the consequences of this clash for years to come. And far beyond the dead world, something ancient finally went back to sleep. The silence, after the collapse, was profound. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of pressure. The force no longer strained against itself here. The ancient site had done what it was built to do one final time: contain, equalize, and then erase itself from the equation. Logan lay half buried in fused stone and shattered durasteel, his body barely recognizable as anything living. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven increments. The glow beneath his skin, usually the telltale sign of rapid regeneration, was gone. What remained was slower, denser, purposeful. He wasn't healing fast anymore. He was healing correctly. Scars didn't vanish as they formed. Burns cooled and stayed. Bone reknit with deliberate care instead of explosive urgency. His body had learned a new rule: survive first, recover second. It hurt like hell. Logan groaned softly, consciousness clawing its way back inch by inch. Every nerve felt like exposed wire. He tried to move and failed, muscles refusing to obey until signals slowly rerouted themselves through rebuilt pathways. Above him, shadows shifted. Stormtroopers stood at the edge of the ruin, weapons raised but unmoving, their discipline cracking under the weight of what they were witnessing. They had seen walkers fall, Jedi die, worlds burn. They had never seen this. Darth Vader remained where the chamber had ended and devastation began. His armor was visibly damaged now, one shoulder blackened and sparking faintly, respirator cadence uneven, cloak torn and trailing across cracked stone. But his presence was undiminished, focused, intent. He looked down at Logan, studying him not as prey or rival, but as a problem that refused to resolve. "The site is destroyed," Vader said, voice carrying easily through the ruin. "Its influence will fade." Logan's lips twitched. A breathless, humorless sound escaped him. "Yeah," he rasped. "You guys are real good at that." Vader stepped closer. Each step sent a faint tremor through the ground, not from the Force this time, but from sheer authority. Logan felt it even through the haze of pain. He forced one eye open, vision blurred, but functional enough to track the dark silhouette, stopping just short of striking distance. "You have denied me certainty," Vader said. "You adapt beyond expectation. You disrupt outcomes." Logan coughed, blood flecking his chin. "You say the sweetest things." Vader regarded him in silence for several long seconds. Then, slowly, he lowered his lightsaber. The red blade hissed out, leaving only the dim glow of damaged systems and reflected stars. "This conflict no longer serves its purpose," Vader said. Logan frowned faintly. "That's new. The Empire does not waste resources on stalemates," Vader continued. "And you are inefficient to pursue under current parameters." Logan managed a weak grin. "You quitting?" Vader's helmet tilted. "No." The Force stirred subtly, not aggressive, not probing. Assessing. "You will continue to interfere," Vader said. "To draw attention. To fracture stability." "Damn straight," Logan muttered. "And in doing so," Vader went on, "you will reveal weaknesses. Networks. Allies. Places where resistance might take root." Logan's grin faded. "You planning to use me?" Vader said nothing. That was answer enough. Logan tried to push himself up again. Failed. His body hadn't finished deciding what it could afford to do yet. Vader watched without intervening. "You could kill me," Logan said finally. "Yes," Vader replied. "Eventually." Logan met the dark lenses of the mask. "Then why don't you?" Vader turned away. "Because monsters that cannot be controlled are best observed," he said. "Until the method becomes clear." He paused, then added quieter. "And because killing you here would make you a martyr." Logan let out a rough laugh that turned into a cough. "You really do think like a tyrant." Vader stepped back toward his troops. "Recover the units," he ordered. "We are leaving." A stormtrooper hesitated. "My lord, the target?" Vader did not look back. "Leave him." The words rippled outward through the ranks, disbelief and confusion echoing in their wake. But no one questioned the order. As the shuttles powered up and Imperial forces withdrew, Logan lay alone in the ruin, staring up at a sky unbroken by beams or banners. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, the hunt had paused. not ended. Paused. Logan closed his eyes and let the pain wash through him, grounding real. Figures, he whispered. It took Logan nearly a full day to stand. Not because he couldn't force himself to. He'd done that his entire life, but because his body no longer rewarded recklessness. Every attempt to rise too quickly ended the same way, muscles locking, vision dimming, nerves misfiring in sharp protest. The ancient sight had changed something fundamental in him. His healing factor still worked, but it no longer sprinted blindly toward survival. It measured. It chose. That terrified him. So Logan waited. He lay among the fused stone and cooling metal, listening to the wind move through the shattered ravine, feeling the galaxy breathe again now that the force had settled back into its familiar, oppressive hum. The null field residue faded slowly, leaving behind a quiet that felt earned rather than imposed. When he finally pushed himself up, it was slow, deliberate. He sat first, then braced one hand against the ground, claws extending instinctively for stability. His skeleton ached in ways it never had before, deep, structural pain that spoke of strain rather than damage. Scars marked his torso, arms, neck. They didn't vanish. They stayed. Logan traced one absently with his thumb. He muttered. Guess you decided to remember this time. He stood. The world swayed, but did not collapse. His balance held. His breathing steadied. The pain didn't fade, but it stopped escalating. That was new too. Logan scanned the ruin. Vader was gone. The Empire had withdrawn completely, leaving behind scorched stone, abandoned equipment, and silence heavy with implication. No probes. No troopers lying in wait. No immediate trap. That worried him more than pursuit ever had. He limped out of the ravine as the distant star crested the horizon, light spilling across jagged rock and turning the destruction into something almost beautiful. By the time he reached higher ground, the freighter Keeler had used was gone as well. Good. Less for the Empire to track. Logan paused at the ridge, looking back once at the place where the ancient site had erased itself from history. Whatever it had been, whatever purpose it had served, it was finished now. But it had left its mark on him. The galaxy didn't forget what happened there. Imperial intelligence buried the reports under layers of classification, but rumors leaked anyway, through smugglers, mercenaries, frightened officers who talked too much in the wrong cantinas. A confrontation with Vader that ended without a body. A target designated observe, not engage. A standing order that made no sense to anyone outside the highest levels of command. The name came later, not given by the Empire, given by the underworld. The unkillable, the metal ghost, the man Vader couldn't finish. Logan hated all of them. He kept moving. He avoided planets Keeler marked as fragile, avoided places where resistance was already smoldering and didn't need a spark that would turn it into an inferno. Instead, he learned to read the Empire's patterns the way he'd once read battlefields, supply chains, fear gradients, where brutality outweighed efficiency. That's where he showed up. Not to inspire revolutions. To interrupt. A prison transport diverted just long enough for inmates to vanish into hyperspace. A garrison commander found alone in a corridor with his authority very suddenly reduced to nothing. A weapons cache quietly dismantled and dropped into a star. Logan didn't stay to watch the aftermath anymore. He learned that, more than anything, unnerved the Empire. Vader watched from a distance, not through anger, not obsession, through patience. Every report crossed his desk eventually. Every disruption mapped. Every pattern analyzed. Logan's behavior shifted over time. Less reckless confrontation, more strategic displacement. He was no longer simply reacting. He was thinking. He's adapting again, an analyst said carefully. Yes, Vader replied. He's limiting exposure, avoiding symbolic victories. Yes, that makes him harder to predict. Vader's breathing remained steady. No, it makes him easier. The Force whispered to him then, not with warning, but recognition. Logan was no Sith, no Jedi, no aberration that fit into existing doctrine. He was something else, a fixed point of resistance that could not be corrupted, could not be intimidated, and, most dangerously, could not be converted. Vader turned away from the holomap. "Continue observation," he said. "When the moment comes, I will end this. Not today, but someday." Logan felt that promise in his bones. He stood on the hull of a drifting freighter hours later, staring out at hyperspace lines stretching endlessly ahead. His body had settled into its new equilibrium now. Slower healing, stronger structure, pain that lingered long enough to teach instead of simply punish. He wasn't immortal anymore. Not really. And somehow, that made him more dangerous. Logan clenched his fists, feeling the adamantium answer him, solid and familiar beneath scarred skin. He didn't know how long he'd last in this galaxy. He didn't know if he'd ever find a way home. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. As long as the Empire hunted him, it would never hunt alone. He stepped back into the ship's interior as the freighter prepared for its next jump, the stars stretching, blurring, carrying him onward into a galaxy that now had to account for him. Not as a hero, not as a legend, but as a problem that refused to go away. And far away, in the quiet currents of the Force, something acknowledged that truth and waited. The galaxy adjusted. It always did. Empires learned to absorb losses, to smooth over disruptions, to reclassify disasters as acceptable margins. Systems burned, population suffered, and the machine continued forward, grinding resistance down into statistics and forgotten footnotes. But this time, something didn't fit. There was no decisive victory to point to, no body to display, no propaganda reel that ended with a corpse and a warning. Only gaps, missing convoys, silenced prisons, worlds that should have broken but didn't, not because they rose up, but because something intervened just long enough for them to breathe. Imperial analysts struggled to quantify it. Logan never stayed long enough to become a symbol in the way rebellions preferred. He didn't lead, didn't preach, didn't promise a better tomorrow. He showed up, broke what was breaking people, and vanished again before hope could harden into something the Empire knew how to crush. That made him infuriating and dangerous. Among the Jedi survivors scattered across the galaxy, his name was spoken rarely and only in private. He wasn't Force-sensitive. He wasn't aligned. He didn't fit prophecy or doctrine. But the Force reacted to him all the same, not as a conduit, but as an immovable presence around which currents bent and shifted. Some believed he was a corrective force. Others feared he was an omen. Keeler, watching from a distance, understood the truth better than most. Logan wasn't balance. He was consequence. The Jedi had spent generations believing balance could be maintained through restraint and detachment. The Sith believed it could be imposed through domination. Logan belonged to neither philosophy. He acted when something in front of him crossed a line and stopped when it didn't. No grand plan, no destiny, just choice made over and over again, regardless of cost. That was why the Force remembered him. Darth Vader never forgot him. Not in anger, not in obsession, but in calculation. Logan represented a failure of containment, proof that not all threats could be neutralized through superior power or ideological control. He could not be corrupted, because he did not desire dominion. He could not be cowed, because pain was already woven into his existence. And he could not be easily destroyed, because survival was not a tactic for him. It was a fact. Vader understood that in time, the galaxy itself would try to resolve the contradiction Logan represented. Someone would overreach. Some contingency would be tested. And when that moment came, the Empire would either adapt or bleed. Until then, Logan remained classified not as an enemy combatant, but as a destabilizing constant. A living variable that forced caution where none had existed before. That alone was unacceptable, and yet useful. Logan never learned how close he came to changing the war outright. He didn't know how many Imperial campaigns were delayed because resources had been quietly rerouted to monitor his movements. How many Inquisitors were reassigned. How many systems were spared escalation because command feared drawing his attention at the wrong moment. he wouldn't have cared. He wasn't fighting the Empire to win a war. He was fighting it because it kept putting people in cages. On nights when the pain was worse, when scars pulled tight and his body reminded him that he was no longer unbreakable, Logan sometimes wondered how long he could keep this up. The galaxy was vast. The Empire was patient. And for the first time in his life, healing wasn't instant enough to erase consequence. Every wound stayed long enough to be felt. That strangely grounded him. He was no longer a weapon that reset itself endlessly. He was a man making choices that left marks. And that made those choices matter. In time, stories spread beyond Imperial space. Among smugglers, he became a cautionary tale. Among slavers, a nightmare. Among the desperate, a rumor whispered like a prayer. Not a savior, not a leader, just someone who showed up when things went too far. Some said he was immortal. Others said he was already dead and just hadn't noticed yet. Logan didn't correct them. He kept moving. Far in the future, long after new rebellions rose and old empires fractured, historians would debate when the galaxy truly began to change. Some would point to battles, others to speeches, heroes, or symbols of hope. A few, working from incomplete records and sealed Imperial archives, would note something stranger. A pattern of interruptions. A series of unexplained survivals. Moments where the Empire hesitated, just slightly, before committing fully to atrocity. They would never agree on what it meant. But the Force would remember. Not as legend, not as prophecy, as proof that even in a galaxy bound by destiny and power, one stubborn, scarred man could still say no, and make it stick. And somewhere between stars and shadow, Logan would keep walking. Not toward victory, not toward peace, just toward the next place where someone needed the Empire to stop. Even for a moment.